Hello, good morning. Crazy Rando Thought, Gina Rose, hello. Thanks for subscribing. Good morning, beautiful people. How's it going? I see a whole bunch of people jump in the chat. Paperboy Chase, hello. JR Boy, Mitch Smith, Winter Witch, ooh, that's a fun name. Just Me 3, Jody Chapel, Flav, or Flav, Flava Flav, I don't know. Loop, James, not Jim. Yeah, you got it. Peter's Points. Good morning, everyone. Hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. Make sure you send some likes as you're jumping in the chat here. So I have been talking about this topic quite a lot. And the last few lives, I feel like I've been all over the place. And I want to give like a really good distilled summary about why this moment is happening. Why people are not like overly empathetic towards the slain of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO. Why people aren't like constantly condemning Luigi Mangione for what he did. Why people feel, why we see this huge social media response. We're also going to talk about how the health insurance industry makes money, oftentimes off of denying people their health care. We're going to be breaking down some of the money, some of the profits, how they make money, how they marginalize people, and how some people say, oh, the system is broken. Or you could say, well, the system is functioning exactly how they intended for them to make money. So we're going to be doing a huge synopsis of everything here. So if this is your first time viewing, make sure to say hello and where you're tuning in from. I like to get to know people. I love all of you. Just as a little thing, this is not a debate live. This is not an argumentative live. I give just raw data information, what we're seeing on the ground. If you don't like that, bye. Scroll. Bye. Bye. I don't do the going back and forth, trying to make it a debate, constantly being provocative and drama seeking. So we don't do that. I am here just to provide raw information. For those of you who are not familiar, don't worry. Something I try to do is break down a lot of the information into common sense terms, layman's terms. Someone says, why do you talk funny? If you think I talk funny, that's on you, because this is just me talking. So, also, yeah, if you can't stand my voice for some odd reason because you're trying to make fun of me for it, scroll on. Minding your own business is free. This is your chance. This is your moment. You have the opportunity to quell your frustrations. Just scroll on. I think my voice is iconic. So, yeah. Anyway, for those of you who are not familiar, these 7 healthcare insurance CEOs made literally $335 million in 2022. And, a lot of people tend to, they're like, oh, well, we love the free market. We love the free market. We want capitalism. We want competition. For all of you who might not know, 5 health insurance companies own over 50% of the market share for health insurance. You heard me right. 5 companies control over half of the market. Well, when those 5 companies all decide to work together to price gouge, to control, to manipulate the system, to give people less benefits while making them charge more, yeah, it's going to lead to an oligarchy. Let's do a huge breakdown of everything happening. And again, if this is your first time in the live stream, make sure to say hello and where you're tuning in from. If you are a returning viewer, and a good friend of the live, just send your favorite emoji. I also do want to point out that I have a live goal. I don't usually do these things. I do this to inform people as like your fellow neighbor that likes to break stuff down. I don't do this to try and make like a huge business or a platform for myself. I'm here to just be informative. And I will share my opinion, and you don't have to agree with my opinion. You don't. You have your own agency. Not that you need my permission, but you have your own agency to come to your own conclusions. Also, just make sure that you know the difference between a fact and an opinion. Because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, that's just my opinion. if your opinion is literally rooted in misinformation, that's not an opinion. That's not an opinion. Make sure that we're all looking at the same set of information in just raw data, facts, science, statistics. If you come to one conclusion and I come to another conclusion, okay, fine, work. I'm going to tell you that you're wrong, but at least you're looking at the same stuff. Make sure you know the difference between a fact and an opinion. Cool. So let's break everything down, shall we? And yes, I do these lives in my car because, I usually do this before going to work. So let's start off from the beginning. For those people who do not know by now, Luigi Mangione, you're like, who is that Italian guy? That is the person who has been accused and now indicted and charged for the unaliving of Brian Thompson. He is the CEO of United Healthcare, which is a huge health insurance company. So you all know the health insurance that you get. You might have it through your employer. You might pay out of pocket for your health insurance so that you're not paying astronomically high hospital bills or healthcare bills. Yeah, so there was a guy named Brian Thompson who's the CEO of United Healthcare. There is a parent company of United Healthcare called United Health Group. So Luigi Mangione, this is the guy who has been indicted and will be facing a grand jury. So he's been indicted for unaliving Brian Thompson, who is the CEO of United Healthcare. United Healthcare is a big health insurance company. You know, insurance is the thing that you pay into, hoping that you don't really ever need to use it, but if you need to use it, then you can access those funds. Insurance is kind of that middleman that you pay into in case you need to dip into it for a rainy day. So when you finally have a injury, you have a surgery you need, or you maybe break that leg or that arm, or maybe you have a condition, get a concussion. You know, it's like, okay, health insurance, I need your help here. I've been paying you. Time for you to pay up. And so you make a claim. Hey, health insurance, can you help cover this? And if health insurance says no, what they do is end up just pocketing your money. They end up pocketing your money, even though you had the contract that, hey, health insurance, you're going to help pay for this when I need it. So, that all being said, Luigi Mangione is being charged with the unaliving of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. And this is the actual indictment itself. There are 11 counts. And I just want to point out that the second count talks about an act of terrorism. Now, you heard me right, an act of terrorism. I might just toot my own horn just a little bit here. I was talking about this yesterday, because this happened not yesterday, but the day before. So that would have been Tuesday. And I started seeing all these videos from independent news journalists on YouTube. Also, like Ken Klippenstein, or I saw like the Humanist Report, Secular Talk. These people are like, yeah, it seems like it's a pretty slippery slope when you start condemning someone for an act of terrorism, when the definition of terrorism is instilling mass fear, mass atrocity, and mass redrum, MURDER. So it's really interesting that he's being charged with terrorism, because usually terrorism means that you want to do as much damage to a group of people and instill that much fear into them, when it seemed like this was only a crime of individual intent to harm one person, not to necessarily drive a whole political movement. And so for them to claim that it's an act of terrorism is kind of overplaying their hand, because they understand why, and this is my opinion, you can disagree, they understand the ramifications of this moment. Like the wealthy, the elite, the establishment, they want to charge him with something way more, because they want to quell as much of that opposition, not allowing it to actually have a seat at the table to challenge the wealthy. Does that make sense? So when reading through here, it says, and the grand jury aforesaid in this indictment further accuses the defendant, Luigi Mangione, of red rum in the second degree as a crime of terrorism in violation of blah, 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 blah. It says, with intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, and affect the conduct of a unit of government by red rum, assassination, or kidnapping. What's so interesting is when we specifically read through Luigi Mangioni's manifesto, tell me if you, and we're going to read through it, tell me if you think that there's any intent to be terroristic. This is his full manifesto. It's out only 262 words. So remember, the definition of terrorism is doing instilling mass fear and mass atrocity and mass harm to a group of people for a political message or political intent. Keep in mind that Luigi Mangione only unalived one person. And in here also says that he wanted to minimize as many civilian casualties, and that's why he pursued the strategy he did. So he says, to the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you all do for this country. To save a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This is fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife of the traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites had it coming. A reminder, the U.S. is the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the largest company in the U.S. by market cap, only behind Apple, Google, and Walmart. Hold on just a second. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No. The reality is, these companies have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit, because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have eliminated the corruption and greed, Rosenthal, Moore, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. And so what's so interesting here is Luigi Mangione, whether you agree or disagree with what he did, is being charged with an act of terrorism. Again, the definition of terrorism is doing mass harm, mass atrocity to a huge group of people for a political goal or intent. This was only a unaliving of one person. That really seemed, it wasn't like, terrorism is a mass thing. You need more than just one subject, one person. Initially, in some of his other notes, he was talking about trying to pursue a different strategy with using like a BOMB. But then he also mentioned, well, actually, that would hurt a lot of innocent people, and we don't want to do that. So that's why he pursued the strategy he did by pew-pewing him in the back. That's why that all happened. So the Manhattan District Attorney's Office that has laid out this indictment, in my view, and you can disagree, it's kind of playing with fire. Like, you don't have to agree with what he did. And I don't. I understand why he did it. I truly do. I don't think that violence is the answer. It can really backfire on you. But also, at the same time, trying to lay out this as an act of terrorism, when you're claiming in here, with intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Coerce how? What does it say? What was he trying to do to coerce or intimidate a population? Population of who? The American people? Or maybe just send a message to wealthy elites, like wealthy people. But when you say the population, you think just like the general public. I guess the general public, the only people in that general public that matter is the CEOs? Are the CEOs or the wealthy shareholders and stuff? Influence the policy of a unit of government. Did he say anywhere in here? Did he say anywhere in his manifesto about any specific government policy? He simply is just talking about the corruption of the healthcare industry. He doesn't lay out, he says that these parasites had it coming. We ranked #1 in the most expensive healthcare system, yet 42 in life expectancy. Like, he's not talking about prescribing any sort of structural solution to any healthcare system, like an alternative. Also, y'all, I do have a live goal, so I appreciate all of you that have been sending roses. Y'all are awesome. So many lawyers disagree with you. Okay, let the lawyers disagree with me. But I'm simply pointing out, to charge someone with an act of terrorism, when terrorism is defined by doing a mass atrocity, mass harm to a large group of people for the intent of a political message, when in this case, it was only one person who had a manifesto, really kind of a intent to harm one person. That all being said, to charge this guy, look, you don't have to agree with what he did, but for them to claim that it was an act of terrorism, his goal was just purely pew-pewing one person. And he had that on there. He's like, these healthcare companies make massive profits. You know, these people have it coming. That's all that he said. Luigi Mangione didn't have any specific ideas or goals necessarily around what the public's response would be. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, in my view, is kind of projecting blame to him upon the public outcry's response to the injustice that they feel they have been facing at the whims of the healthcare industry. Does that make sense? Terrorism is not defined the way you just said it is. It's literally in the statute. Well, who wrote the statute? It's interesting because when you listen to Noam Chomsky, if you all know who Noam Chomsky is, it's interesting because our government likes to define terrorism in a way that is favorable to the United States instead of the actual definition. And then we use the manufactured definition that they like themselves and prescribe it upon their actions, but have a different definition of terrorism abroad. So I am not going to go by what the statute says there, because they're the ones that are crafting up that specific definition that is favorable to them, which is exactly what our justice system is not supposed to do. But yet it does. Why? Because the United States thinks that they can be the most supreme country in the world. Does that make sense? By the way, just as like a little reminder, if you're a quiet listener and you enjoy this live, simply just comment yes. Simply just comment yes. The reason I say that is because there's a lot of people that constantly try to take up space in the live stream and try to be obnoxious about it, or try to find their little, I guess, gotcha moments. For those of you that are maybe on your way to work, or getting the kids ready for school, or packing the little lunches, maybe you're doing laundry, maybe you're using the Taylor Swiffer, you know? I appreciate every single one of you that makes this morning live stream a part of your routine. It means a lot, especially to all my subscribers. Y'all are awesome. Disco Unicorn! Hold on, I have to follow you just because I love that name. I love that name. So, anyway, Rocky, I'm glad you're here. They're back. What is it? I'm back, so they're in trouble. And you know what's really interesting? Ghostcraft makes a good point. Let's just actually think this through. Let's say that this was a pew-pewing, let's say Luigi Mangione went, unalive someone who was not a CEO of a company. Not a CEO of a company. And it was just like a normal person. Would that be charged as an act of terrorism? And people would say, well, it's the fact that he's a CEO that leads it to being an act of terrorism. Okay, so are we going to then claim that because of someone's status in society, that's what makes it an act of terrorism? You're elevating people who are CEOs, wealthy captains of industry, as worthy of... You're elevating them to being, okay, if that person's unaliving warrants that charge of terrorism. That's going to be a difficult thing for the prosecution to argue. It's going to be difficult for them to argue that because he's not a political figure. He's not a political figure. See, this is the thing. The charge of terrorism, and this is my interpretation. Tell me if you agree. The charge of terrorism is kind of the Manhattan District Attorney or just like the wealthy people trying to send a message. It's them kind of overplaying their hand. It's very slippery slope trying to charge Luigi Mangione with terrorism. If you agree, then just put your favorite emoji in the chat. It can be a very slippery slope because let's unpack hypotheticals here. Let's say that you want to provide a political message that the government doesn't like, the government disagrees with. Let's say that you do that. Well, if you, in here, it says that they're charging him with terrorism for the purpose with intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, and affect the conduct of a unit of government by red rum, assassination, or kidnapping. What's interesting is you can see in here, they're saying they're charging him with terrorism because of what they deem as coercion of a civilian population and influence influence the policy of a unit of government. That becomes a very slippery slope because we have the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion. So what that is there, I'm just worried that if they decide to go through with allowing this terrorism charge, what it does is it erodes our First Amendment rights and protections against protesting the government. I'm not saying that the way he protested is okay with unaliving someone. But what's simply put is they're kind of overplaying their hand because they understand this whole thing is kind of like protecting the wealthy. They're trying to nail him on terrorism charges, even though that would erode everyone's First Amendment rights and protections. You don't have the right to unalive someone. That's not my point. But it becomes a slippery slope if you want to charge him specifically with terrorism, which again, is when you do mass atrocity to a huge group of people. I think a lot of people understand what I'm saying. It's just a slippery slope. And I feel like if the prosecution were to have not included the terrorism charge, they would have actually probably been way more successful. I feel like I'm not making sense, but I think a lot of people... Do you all understand what I'm saying? Like, obviously, it doesn't then mean that you are okay with unaliving someone. That's not the point. You make sense? Okay, cool. And here's the thing. I don't know if you all have seen... there's a specific group of movies. Hercule Poirot. Have you seen... They're kind of like mystery movies. Hercule Poirot. Poirot? I think that's his name. Poirot. He's kind of like an inspector. He's an inspector that takes on cases. There's one movie, I forget what the name is called. Hercule Poirot. Yes. I'm going to pin Ringo's comment. There are specific movies with a... he's an Agatha Christie character. Yes, thank you. And Hercule Poirot. That's his name, yeah. And there are specific movies and books that talk about... And one of them there was a unaliving of someone on a train. And there were a whole bunch of suspects on the train. I'm sorry, I might ruin the movie for people. And a lot of the people that were on this train were negatively affected by this person's actions. I'm not going to say those specific things. But a lot of them were all working together to, I guess, have a thing where they unalive someone. And Hercule Poirot was like, all these people were working together to give this person karma. The Orient Express, thank you. This moment kind of reminds me of the Orient Express. If the company of United Healthcare, which has made exorbitant amounts of profits by denying people healthcare, which leads to families going bankrupt because they have to pay out of pocket for medical care, and then they go bankrupt for it, and their life expectancy is lowered because they're not getting that healthcare they need, because they're paying out of pocket, and then they run out of money. You know, if you are the head of an industry that causes so much pain to so many people and bankrupts them, leads them to death, is it then justified for an action like that to happen? So, I would not be surprised if when it comes down to Luigi Mangioni's case, if the jury were to find him guilty of the crime itself, but choose not to charge him. Now, you heard me right. I don't know how it would necessarily work. Here's the thing. I think that people are going to be like, yeah, obviously you did it. But am I going to want to charge you with the crime? No. Jury notification. Thank you. Thank you. I think that a lot of people are going to be like, well, these health insurance CEOs make tons of money by bankrupting people, by meeting a quota of denying people their medical care claims, and they increase their shareholders' value by causing pain and suffering to other people. So is it really that super immoral to then go and do this kind of thing? Because if you're the CEO of a health insurance company who has metaphorically blood on your hands for other people you know dying because they had to pay out of pocket and go bankrupt, and then they don't get the medical care they need, what is the most moral thing in that sense? Some people might justify it and think of it differently. And especially if you're using AI to deny people claims. If you're using AI artificial intelligence to automatically just deny people's health insurance claims, and it leads their loved one to dying, and they don't fix that system for 6 years, people are going to come to that kind of conclusion. Y'all, please make sure to send some likes. I want to shift now. We use AI to do evictions. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. We're gonna quickly shift to talking about another aspect of all of this. Make sure you drink some water and say something kind about yourself today. Y'all are amazing. So, do you all know who Wendell Potter is? If you've been on my live stream, you may know who I'm talking about. Do you have the link for the full indictment? I do not have the link for the full indictment, but I can quickly put it up here for just another sec. If you just type in the people of the state of New York versus Luigi Mangione, you should be able to find the indictment. There are 11 counts, by the way, and the second count is the terrorism charge. So, but do you all know who Wendell Potter is? Hello, intelligent and articulated person. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you. I appreciate all of you. Is the manifesto real? Yes. I'm glad I can give you all hope again. I'm seeing people say no. So do you all know who Wendell Potter is? I'm going to ask one more time. If you do, say yes. If you don't, then just say no. It's okay if you don't. If you've been in my live stream, you may have heard of him. Okay, cool. I'm seeing a lot of people say no. So that's okay. We're all going to learn. This is someone I didn't know about until a few weeks ago. Wendell Potter used to be the chief communications officer at Cigna. Cigna is a big health insurance company, similar to United Healthcare. Cigna, I'll give you a list of health insurance companies. That way you can kind of compare. Hold on just a second, let me find it. So, where is the picture? Where is it? So you see like Cigna right here. They deny 18% of health insurance claims. United Healthcare denies about a third of health insurance claims. So Wendell Potter was the chief communications officer. That's him. For Cigna. He was, head of corporate communications right here. And he used to be a journalist. He got his training in journalism, and I'll tell you why I'm bringing him up. He became like a huge whistleblower for the health insurance industry, and he actually has provided a lot of insight as to why and how the system is, in his words, unraveling, but also how it's corrupt, how and why people are angry at the system, what they do to profit off of other people's pain. So, this is a guy who used to be like the chief communication person at this big healthcare company. And he is now like very, very, very pro Medicare for all, a universal system. He he kind of grew up doing journalism, and I'm just paraphrasing this all here. I think he had got a degree in journalism, and then he kind of started working in the healthcare industry, the health insurance industry. And he's like, I spent 20 years. It was a career I never anticipated. I was a journalist in my first career out of school. Grew up in Tennessee, yada yada. Then I got into work in PR. Found myself working at Humana, which is another health insurance company. Then Cigna, two of the biggest health insurance companies, all together for about 20 years. He said, I rose up the ranks and was heading corporate communications at Cigna when I had a crisis of conscience. I came to realize that what I was doing for a living, in too many cases, was the exact opposite of what I tried to do as a reporter. I realized that I was misleading people. I told myself the story that I never intentionally lied, but I was misleading people to perpetuate the private insurance industry and was a willing cheerleader for the industry for a long time. He said, I came to realize that what I was doing was not only so far afield from what I used to do as a reporter, but I also played a role in perpetuating the very broken and dysfunctional and unfair healthcare system. And he gives a specific experience where he said, on a trip back to Tennessee to see family, I went to something called a healthcare expedition that was being held at a county fairgrounds nearby. I went there out of curiosity. Y'all make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. If everyone can send like 100 likes or at least 50, that really does help out the live stream. He said, I've often said that it was my road to Damascus experience. That's a reference from like the Bible. I saw people who were waiting in long lines to get care in barns and animal stalls. It broke my heart. It made me realize that I had some responsibility for that. I had made a commitment that day to figure out some other ways to earn a living. There were other reasons. I was beginning to grow disenchanted with what I was expected to say and be a cheerleader for. In particular, this was the beginning of the early stages of insurance companies moving everyone into high deductible plans, and I began to question that policy. I knew that from experience that working from the inside, trying to change something that was an industry-wide strategy, just was not something that I had the ability to influence. So I left. I became a critic of the industry and ultimately decided to be a very public critic and testified before Congress. And in this interview, he talks about a couple very notable things about the industry. And I'm going to start with one of them. Do you all know what the term benefit buy down is? Benefit buy down. If you know what it is, say yes in the chat. If you don't know what it is, say no. If you've been in my live streams, you probably know what it is. This is something that doesn't just apply to the health insurance industry, but it applies to all these big businesses. Benefit buy down. This is a term that is very emblematic of our time. I see people who have been in here say yes. I love you all. And I hope that you all tell your friends about it. Benefit buy down is a term that simply means when you pay more and more and more for the same product, the same service, but you get less and less of that product or less and less of that service. So I think one of the classic examples is the chip bag. When you go to the grocery store, I live in North Carolina, so there's a whole bunch of grocery stores called Harris Teeter. Let's say I go to Harris Teeter, the grocery, and I want to buy a big bag of potato chips. Well, in this economy, oftentimes, the potato chip bag gets smaller and smaller and smaller and more expensive. More and more expensive. That is benefit buy down, where you're paying more for less of the product. It can also happen with a service. So in health insurance, you're paying your premium, your copays, your deductibles. Let's say that it goes up by $20, $40 every year, going up more and more and more and more and more. But then let's say that a part of that service of health insurance, you used to have 50 doctors in network. Now you have 40 doctors in network. You used to have 20 dentists in network. Now you only have 10 dentists in network. Let's say that you are paying your health insurance and there's a provision where you're paying more and more, but then you're now only going to start getting coverage 2 weeks out after you file the claim. They can call it shrinkflation as well. Benefit buy down is another way to call it. And specifically, this mentions the monopolization of markets. You all know the game Monopoly, right? You all know the game Monopoly? You play with your siblings and then you get angry and you start throwing things at each other. Well, maybe that happened with me. But Monopoly is when you have a whole bunch, you own so much of something that people need. So let's say that your one of your opponents playing Monopoly, one of your siblings, owns one whole side of the board. So when you're going around every single time on the board, you're gonna land. Let's say that they own Boardwalk and Park Place, but then also that railroad and Pennsylvania, North Carolina avenues, and whatever the other one is. They own that whole side of the board. So when you're moving around the board, you're gonna have to probably land on one of those. The reason why benefit buy down continues to happen, why shrinkflation continues to happen, we are all the little top hat with no properties. Yeah. The reason why that continues to happen is because there are fewer and fewer companies owning more and more of the industry. So there used to be so many different health insurance companies. And now it's starting to get smaller and smaller because all of those companies buy up other companies. So you have 5 companies that own over 50% of the market. Let me give you that list. For a second. Hold on. These 5 companies, United Healthcare, Medica, Anthem, Aetna, and I believe Blue Cross Blue Shield, own over 50% of all health insurance. So, let me find the specific list here. Hold on, because I want to show that. Where did it go? Boop, 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 boop. Where did it go? I work very hard to do what I do, so thank you all for your patience. Literally, my, it's nearby here, hold on. It's nearby this thing. Ha! There it is. These 5 biggest health insurance companies make up half of the health insurance market here. United Health Group, which is like United Healthcare, Elevance, also called Anthem, Kaiser Permanente, Centene, and Humana. So I was wrong about Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna. My apologies. So you can see here, these 5 companies own over 50% of the market share. The reason why benefit buy down happens The reason why benefit buy down happens, where you start paying more and more and more for less and less of a product or less and less coverage. Isn't Anthem? Yes, I believe that Anthem also owns Blue Cross Blue Shield. That all being said, the reason why this continues to happen is because when you and other captains of industry all decide, you know what? Yes, we could compete against each other, but we could also all collectively decide to raise our prices, and everyone suffers. Everyone suffers. Because if you and your 4 other rich buddies that control almost half of the market all decide, you know, we could all benefit if we all just raised our prices. If you have a small enough group of people that decide to take advantage of something that everyone needs, that's price fixing and also illegal, doesn't mean that doesn't happen. Move your head so we can see the list. Patience, my guy, patience. That's collusion. Right. But that also does happen. That also does happen because they all decide to raise their own prices. They decide to raise their own prices. Why do they do that? Because they all benefit. So this is where benefit buy down happens. That's where it happens, this benefit buy down. Where you pay more and more for a product or a service, but then you get less and less of that product or less service, less perks. It works with hospitality. I mean, you can use this benefit buy down for so many things. It works in hospitality. Maybe you pay more and more for that same hotel room, that same club, that same experience when you go somewhere, to an amusement park, to any place. But then you get less and less service. You pay more for that hotel room, but then you don't get the same benefits of having access to a TV or access to room service or a discount on room service, all of that. So it's the same way where you're paying more and more for a product, but then you get less and less of that product. It could be that way for grocery. You pay more for eggs, but then you get less eggs in the carton. Works that way for maybe the telecom industry or like your phone bill. You pay more and more for a phone each time, but then you get less and less perks from Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. This kind of thing is emblematic. So it happens with the health insurance industry specifically, moving people into high deductible plans, making them pay a lot more for care out of pocket before their coverage kicks in, limiting their choice to access of doctors. So where you're paying more and more and more for less and less coverage. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, then just say yes. I love all of you. Thank you all for being here, by the way. How do we ask for free healthcare for all? We'll get there. We'll definitely get there. If that all makes sense, then just say yes. And if you want to provide your own example, feel free to just type it in the chat there. I saw someone say something about airlines. Airlines pay for your ticket, but then pay for your bag. Oh, but now you have to pay for your seat. Yeah, exactly. And if more and more airlines decide to do that thing, where you pay more for your ticket, but then all these other things that used to be included are now extra charges, well, you'd be like, oh, well, another company's going to come by and have that solid where they're not going to do that. Well, what if a way to stifle that competition is just for one of the bigger companies to buy them up? And you're like, oh, okay. So then they get bought out by a bigger company, swallowing up that competition and discontinuing that thing. So and this is my own little side tangent. A lot of people will say, oh, well, the free market will fix it. The free market will fix it. These companies, they do these predatory things. You're going to have someone that comes through. They're going to have someone that comes through and they're going to offer a product or service that isn't predatory, that isn't doing this benefit buy down. Okay, you do have those people. But also what happens? What happens with that? They get bought out. those companies get bought out. They get bought by bigger companies, swallowed up. Those companies grow bigger and bigger and bigger. They increase their market share. And you say, well, isn't there something that's supposed to stop that? Yeah, it's called antitrust. And that's been declining more and more because for some odd reason, America likes when we don't have competition so that the heads of industry make more and more profits. I'll give you an example. Pharmaceutical industries. The pharmaceutical companies. Now, and I'm going to put up a background specifically talking about that. A little like an informative graphic at the same time. Pharmaceutical companies do this exact same thing. Let's say that, and I gave the example yesterday. Let's say that you have a prescription for a life-saving medication that regulates your blood pressure. And let's say that it's a prescription that you take and it's like a little tablet. Someone trying to compliment someone's trying to compliment my brows. Thank you. Thank you. If you don't like the way I look, then scroll on. Minding your own business is free. Just because you might not like the way that you look doesn't mean you have to try to come for me. Okay? I think I look great, and if you disagree, that's on you. Alright? Go hug a cactus. Go step on a Lego. Minding your own business is free. Got it? Get it? Good. Anyway. Specifically, pharmaceutical companies do this. Let's say that you take a prescription. I'm going to say that it's I'm going to come up with a drug name, okay? I'm just going to try to like think of something. Zypritophan. Zypritophan. Yes, I just made up a drug name, okay? Let's say that you take a little tablet that regulates your blood pressure, and it's called Zypritophan. And you pay $10, for your medication, $10 for your medication, per month. So you have a monthly supply of Zypritophan. And it only costs $10 to go and get it at the pharmacy. And then let's say that company, that small company that made that drug through their own research and development, let's say that company, which is called Rika, that company Rika gets bought. And it gets bought by another company called Insura. So Insura buys Rika, and in order to recoup the costs, they decide to raise the price of that drug. What are you going to do? Not take it? You need that prescription to stay alive. You need that Zypritophan in order that prescription to stay alive. So you're going to pay, let's say that they do a 200% increase on it. 200%. So it's going to go up to $30 per month. Okay. Well, let's say that Insura gets bought by another company. Let's say that Insura gets bought by Forsyth. Forsyth then's like, well, we need to recover the costs, recoup the costs, so we're going to jack up the price again to $100. And this happens over a short time frame. What are you going to do? Not pay for your prescription that you need to stay alive? So what then happens is that you start paying more and more for the same prescription. But does the drug improve? No. Are there less side effects? No. It just costs more and more for the same prescription. Why? Because companies get bought by other companies that get bought by other companies that in order to then recover their costs, raise the prices. And you're like, but isn't that kind of rude? Wouldn't that be illegal? There's no thing that says that's illegal. And that's the problem. That's the problem. And you're like, oh, well, that's just business. Right, but that's also why you have protections in place to stop predatory behavior from corporations. Someone says pharmaceutical industrial complex is too strong, just accept it. Absolutely not. I am not going to accept corporate greed that hurts other people. What kind? Oh, just accept it. No. Definitely not. Definitely not. I am not going to accept injustice. What kind of what's the word? What kind of concept is that? Just accept corporate greed? No, I'm going to call it out. Yeah, why don't we just accept being overcharged for life-saving treatments? Yeah, right? Right, okay, I'll just accept being a victim of a system that constantly marginalizes people. Yeah, why not? These bots are really getting crazy these days. When you say that you gave up. I know, right? Like, why don't you just accept that rich people are going to constantly profit off of other people's pain? You know what? Sounds like a good idea, Luke. Let's go get some milkshakes and let's go talk about how we lick Elon Musk's feet. No. Someone says, when you turn 65, you will shut up then. First off, I'm never going to shut up. Secondly, who knows if I'll even reach 65? And thirdly, you don't know who I am, so it's ironic that you are prescribing you think you know me well enough to make a prediction. Kia, oh my goodness, hello! That all being said, this is how these pharmaceutical companies work. Let's give another example. Cyprine is a drug that regulates copper in the blood. And I know about it because I watched a documentary talking about how these pharmaceutical companies make a whole bunch of money. Cyprine is owned by one company. Let's say that it's $10 a tablet. So let's say that you're paying about, if it's $5 a tablet, and 5 times 30, what's 5 times 30? $150. It's $150 for your prescription every month. Now, $150 per your prescription a month because it's $5 per tablet. And let's say that company gets bought by another company. In order to recover the costs, they're going to increase the cost of that drug. And again, what are you going to do? Not take it? You need to take that drug to regulate the copper in your blood so that you stay alive. So, you just decide to pay the price. So it goes from $5, let's say you double it to $10. Now it's $300 a month. $300 a month for your same prescription. You can basically turn straw into gold. If you're willing to make people pay exorbitant amounts of money for their life-saving prescriptions, then yeah, you could basically bankrupt people trying to afford your prescriptions. But if someone has to take a prescription in order to stay alive, to regulate their body's like blood pressure or regulate like any sort of their organ functions, and you're making them pay a certain amount per month, and you decide to be immoral and pull that lever and increase the price, you can basically turn that prescription into like a cash cow. And you're like, well, why would you do that? That'd be so rude. Well, if there's no law against it, corporations are going to do what they're got to do. Look, I'm angry at corporations for acting on predatory behavior, but I'm also personally angry at government for not regulating them to stop that bad behavior. And what is so funny, and this is just a side note, any single time that any person says, we need government regulation to stop this bad behavior from companies from doing this kind of stuff, a lot of people, and you know who, they're like, oh my God, that's communism, that's Marxism, that's socialism. The purpose of government is to stop and regulate bad behavior of actors within our society that seek to exploit other people, specifically businesses or politicians. That's the purpose of government. The original purpose is to be a group of people that manage and make sure things are done right for the group of people that elect them, theoretically. So when there are corporations that exploit loopholes in order to price gouge people, there's supposed to be regulation in place to stop that. But is there? No. There's a group of people that claim that any sort of attempt at regulation is somehow overreach. You know? So, anyway. That all being said, these companies will make exorbitant amounts of money by hoovering up other companies, like vacuuming them up. And that's why our prescription drugs are so expensive. So expensive these days. Is because one small company gets bought by another company. In order to recover the cost, they raise the price twofold. So your original prescription goes from $150 a month to $300 a month. Then that company is bought by another company, and they do the same thing. They raise it 100%. They raise it 100%. So it goes from $300 to $600 a month. And let's say this happens every year. Let's say that then that happens again. Another company buys another company, and then that company raises it another 100%. So it goes from $600 to then $1,200 a month. Well, going from $150 to $1,200 a month, where 3 years ago was only $150, you're like, wow, that's price gouging. But if there's no laws in place to stop it, if there's no people that have the political will to stop it, then what's the solution there? Like, that's where we are with our system. And so, going back to the point that I was making earlier about benefit buy down. Hold on, just a second. When companies buy other companies that buy other companies and they increase their market share, it doesn't matter how big they get. They can make you pay more and more and more because they bought up all the other competition. And they can give you less and less service, less and less perks, less and less quality to do that. Same with banks. Banks will buy up smaller banks, they'll buy up smaller banks, they'll buy up smaller banks. And then they will have their product or service. Doesn't matter how crappy their customer service is. If they're big enough, what are you going to do? Go to another person? What kind of competition is out there? If they buy it up. Am I making as much sense as I'm thinking? Does that all make sense? If it does, then say yes in the chat. Yeah, and Awake Lunastar, I'm on the same page. Like, I don't agree or condone any violence. Personally, no. That's awful. It's understandable why someone might come to that conclusion based on desperation because of the system that exploits people. Why are you speaking on a woman's issue? How are prescription drugs a women's issue? Also, how are you doing, Kia? Can I read the background? Yeah, absolutely. How are you doing, Kia? I love all of you. I love all of you. LOL, it's a humanity issue. Yeah, some of these trolls are really really wild this morning. Doing okay? How are you? Aw. Yeah, well, some people like that shock value. They decide to come in here and be obnoxious for the purpose of trying to be obnoxious. Stop speaking on a woman's issue. Oh, I didn't realize that all prescription drug prices were women's issues. Oh, there's a bug in my car. Hello. What are you doing up there? What are you doing up there, buddy? Here. Go out. Go out. Another reason... Hi, Mr. Bug. Yes, I am in my car. Another reason why I bring up Wendell Potter is specifically because he talked about another word. Insurance companies also are afraid of the word disintermediation. This is another word that I wanted to bring up today. If you don't learn anything or take away anything from the live, other than benefit buy down, disintermediation is another one. Disintermediation. Oh, thank you for not unaliving it. Oh, yeah, you bet. If I have the opportunity to get the bug outside, then I will. Oh, it wants me to verify the live. Hold on. Make sure I'm a human person. Am I a human? Okay. There. So the Wendell Potter, who again I was bringing up earlier, if you're just scrolling in the live, Wendell Potter is someone who used to work as like the chief communications officer for Cigna, which is a big healthcare insurance company. And he worked with the company for a while. He's like, I had a crisis of consciousness. I didn't like what the company was doing, being kind of predatory, all of that said. And he talked about benefit buy down, and we just went over all of that. And then another thing he talked about was disintermediation. And you're like, okay, that's a huge word. Yes, let's break it down. Mediation, M-E-D, is kind of like, it means middle. Mediation kind of means like being in the middle. Dis means subtracting the middle. So disintermediation means eliminating the unnecessary middle. He says in here that he was in a meeting with the CEO of Cigna, and someone asked the CEO, who he worked closely with, who was his boss, he said, "Sir, what keeps you up at night?" And the CEO of this health insurance company said the word disintermediation. Eliminating the middleman. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on. Huh? What does that mean? Well, the CEO of this health insurance company basically admitted that health insurance is kind of like an unnecessary middleman. The CEO went on to say that he feared that at some point Americans, in particular American employers, would begin to question the value proposition, to use business jargon, of the private insurance industry. So, if the CEO of a company is admitting that their business model is kind of like an unnecessary middleman that siphons off money between people and their doctors, what does that tell you? A lot of health insurance companies, I'm sure that a lot of people that work in health insurance also feel this way. It's like, oh, it's just like an unnecessary middleman. I mean, if the CEO of a health insurance company openly says that during a meeting, that should tell you all you need to know. So that was another thing that Wendell Potter, who is, again, this chief communications officer at Cigna, was like, yeah, that's another thing with the whole industry. So not only are they doing benefit buy down, but also they're afraid of disintermediation, where people start to realize that insurance is, unless it's done very, very securely, unless it's done way more efficiently and actually regulated to the point, which I don't think it ever will be, it's kind of a scam. And I feel bad because there's a lot of people who work in insurance. I think that insurance can work, but does it work in our hyper-capitalist system? No, it doesn't. It just takes advantage of people and is kind of like that money grubber. Let's say you go to the doctor, and insurance is in the middle. Insurance kind of just siphons money away from the people and their doctors and prevents them from getting care. Like, that's what it really turns into. And something I also want to provide here. This is life expectancy. Not if it's for profit. 11 cases, not if it's for profit. If there is non-profit health insurance companies, then sure, maybe that would then work out. Can I see the definition again, please? Yes. So disintermediation, it's a word that essentially means disrupting or getting rid of the unnecessary middleman. Which the CEO of this health insurance company is like, yeah, that's what keeps me up at night. Now, I want to point out something here. I want to point out specifically life expectancy. You can see how life expectancy has been going up and up and up and up and up. These are other countries kind of at our caliber. So the UK, France, you also have like Germany, Sweden, South Africa, Japan, these kind of first world countries that are quote unquote modern and Western. We pay a lot of money, but still rank 42 in life expectancy in the world. We pay the most money for healthcare, but yet rank 42%. Look, I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk. But he also did kind of make a good point. Let me see if I can find the specific post from him. Let me find the post. Hold on a second. He says, shouldn't the American people be getting their money's worth? We pay the most for healthcare. Administrative costs per capita. Per capita means per person. Yet, we rank number 42. We rank number 42 in life expectancy. Oh, I know. It's really rich coming from him. Absolutely. Absolutely. Shouldn't we be getting our money's worth? Says the guy who takes billions of dollars in government contracts. That all being said, doesn't mean that he's wrong. But yeah, coming from him, it's really rich. But I will give him credit when he deserves it. Specifically here, when we're looking at this, knowing that we pay the most for healthcare, but we rank 42 in life expectancy, doesn't that say something? I also want to point out here, this was the pandemic. You see this dip here? That was the pandemic. That was COVID. You're like, well, why is our dip so much bigger than the other countries? You have all these other countries, again, UK, France, Canada, Germany, Sweden, all these other countries here. Luxembourg, Belgium. We have a huge dip here. Well, what makes us so different than a lot of these other countries? We are the only country, only first world country, not to guarantee healthcare to citizens. We have the only for-profit health insurance industry for a first world country. Oh, that was almost an accident, I swear to God. Sorry, I'm sitting in my car and I'm just like, sometimes there are cars that pass in front of me and I'm like, oh. I literally almost just watched an accident. Oh dear. So that all being said, what is the difference that we as the United States have versus all these other countries? As Bernie says, we are the only country not to guarantee healthcare as a human right to our citizens. We have a for-profit health insurance system in the middle. Thank you, Kia. I love you, and I'm so happy that you were here. I'm so happy that you're here. Addie, please don't, I think people have gotten that message. Please don't spam in the chat. Please don't spam in the chat. Someone said, what? So, that all being said, y'all please make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. Shouldn't we be getting our money's worth in that sense? Absolutely. Absolutely. One more on my way out. Yeah, I actually just went to go and mute him, but then I saw he was already muted. A lot of people will say, well, why is there so much anger over United Healthcare? Why did Luigi Mangione do something like this? United Healthcare denies a third of all health insurance claims. You heard me right, a third. Let me find the chart. Let me find the chart. Hold on. Where did it go? Where is the chart? There it is. United Healthcare denies over a third of all health insurance claims. You're like, well, what's a health insurance claim? You know how you pay your premium, your copay, your deductible? You pay insurance. Well, United Healthcare denies a third of those claims. When you make a claim that's saying, hey, health insurance company, can you help cover this life-saving procedure that I need? Can you cover partially the cost of my prescription? Can you cover this hospital visit because my son just got a concussion and it needs some care? Well, United Healthcare denies around a third of all of their claims. Meaning that when people call on them to then have something covered, they deny it. They deny it. And when these companies don't have to pay or compensate people, then they pocket money. That's how it works. These shareholders are happy. The company makes more money when they have to pay less people for coverage. That's how these shareholders make a whole bunch of money. But what does that end up doing? Well, you make money off of denying people health care. That's the way it's designed. That's the way it's designed. So, it would make sense that someone might be upset around that system, especially considering that United Healthcare has actually been facing a lawsuit where they use an AI algorithm, an artificial intelligence algorithm, to prematurely deny people their health insurance claims without even a human looking at the actual claim itself. And a lot of those denials were just programmed in there and should not have happened. So United Healthcare constantly just programmed this AI bot to deny people healthcare, and all of these things, more than 90% of appeals, people are like, I should not be getting denied for this. Makes people upset when they're denied their access to healthcare. So United Health is being sued over allegations that it used an algorithm to deny rehabilitation care for Medicare Advantage beneficiaries, despite knowing the algorithm's high error rate. I also want to note that this system started in 2018. 2018. And guess what? Still has not been fixed. It's 2024. So, denying people healthcare, leading people to paying out of pocket, leading to people becoming bankrupt, not also getting access to that care, might make people desperate. Might make people desperate. When you unalive thousands of people in hospitals by taking away their ability to get treatment and bankrupt them, you're an entrepreneur. Though when you unalive one man in the street, it's red rum. So, I also just want to point out, and I've shared this before, y'all please make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. I love all of you. Brian Thompson, this is the guy who is unalived by Luigi Mangione. He's the CEO of United Healthcare. I want to provide some testimonies, some examples of people who have had their stories. So he posts things like on LinkedIn saying, "We work every day to find ways to make #healthcare more affordable, including reducing the price of life-saving prescription drugs." I want to point out, pause. Words are only going to get you so far. And this is a side tangent. I get so frustrated with politicians, Democrat, Republican, that will use these buzzwords thinking that they're sounding so like either woke or progressive or populist or like they're taking on the establishment and the elite. I am so exhausted, personally, of all these politicians that think that using jargon is somehow really shoving it to the system. I'm so tired of it. Just because you say life-saving prescription drugs doesn't mean that you actually do anything to reduce the prices. There are all these politicians that sound so progressive or so woke, especially even Democrats. There are Republicans that sound that say things that are supposedly so populist. They care about the working person. The working person. He's not a politician. Right. But also captains of industry, included in my example. There are people who are CEOs of companies that do these kinds of things to show like, oh, I really care. I really care. So it extends to not just politicians, but also all these captains of industry, where they're trying to rehabilitate their image by sounding so progressive or populist, like they care. It's really just all a whole bunch of buzz, but no follow through. It's all rhetoric, but no action. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Sure, it might have worked in 2008, but it's not 2008. It is 2024. We need something way more. We need something way more than just fancy buzzwords. fancy buzzwords. So, this guy was like, American pocketbooks are stretched too thin in an uncertain economic environment, including high inflation and rising interest rates. People were like, this sounds like a laudable mission, Brian Thompson. But United Health Group is failing my mother by not providing her the basic care to get better and back her life. You cannot continue to delay any decision making and authorizing, which is compromising her health even more. And if she doesn't get back to her baseline, United Health Group is partially responsible. This message is an example of hypocrisy at its finest. You are denying claims to people who need it. The only thing this company is good for is, it says, is screwing their customers. These are just responses to his LinkedIn post. Hey Brian, I just spent an hour on the phone battling to get general information from my wife with stage 4 cancer. She's a 45-year-old mother of 4 with an abnormal EGFR gene. I'd love to share my experiences with you. Provides the number, is my cell phone number. You're doing a great job at cutting costs. Not having a single anesthesiologist in network in the entire state of Montana is a great policy to save you money. And these are just responses on his LinkedIn. And it goes on and on. So I just I'm exhausted with a whole bunch of like politicians on both sides of the aisle, or these people who are wealthy that control these elitists that will use all these fancy buzzwords to sound like they really care. They'll sound woke, or they'll sound populist. And in reality, they're just throwing out a whole bunch of rhetoric, thinking it's gonna pacify people. Like, oh yeah, they're saying all the right things, but do they do the right things? No. So, I also want to share this. I talked about this probably about like a week ago, but I want to talk about it. So, I love all of you. Please make sure to send some likes. Y'all are awesome. So, this is from Ken Klippenstein. Do you all know who Ken Klippenstein is? And that was literally from 2 years ago. I know, right? Oh, thank you all so much. Joanna Tech, you're awesome. Thank you for being here. Do you all know who Ken Klippenstein is? If you do, then say yes in the chat. If you don't, then say no. It's okay if you don't know him. Peace, tranquility, me. That's a nice name. I see you in here a fair bit. Make sure to follow you back. If I see people in here a whole bunch, I will follow you back. Just because, like, if you support me and I see you in here all the time, I'm going to support you. That's what I do. So Ken Klippenstein is an independent journalist. You can find him on X, formerly known as Twitter, and he does some really, really good work. He is the reason why the manifesto went public. Why Luigi Mangioni's manifesto was actually released. For context here, there are like news outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, news outlets like those, or even just like all of these other publications, they got their hands on the manifesto, but they chose not to publish it. Because they didn't want the public to see it. They thought it was too extreme. Literally, those were their words. The rantings of a madman is what they said it was. You can come to your own conclusion. I think that's bonkers. But Ken Klippenstein got his hands on it. He's like, I'm going to publish it. So it got published. The reason why we have the manifesto is because he decided, he's like, no, the American people deserve to see this, which we do. So Mad Men can be correct sometimes. I don't know what Mad Men is. Is that a movie? Because they knew that we would back it, LMAO. Yeah. Yeah. So that all being said, Ken Klippenstein also got his hands on leaked talking points that have been given to the lower rung employees at United Healthcare. And this next part, I am not critiquing anyone who works at United Healthcare. If you are like a lower level customer service kind of person who's just simply trying to provide, food for, your kids, or just trying to make money so that you can get by. My critique is not towards them. It's towards the system that perpetuates this inequality and that uses those people as well. Uses those people to then, for those wealthy folks, to deny people their health insurance, to deny people and use them, make them the enemy. Tomorrow, I might try to do a segment where there are several people that work at United Healthcare and just the healthcare industry in general that are coming forward saying that they have a quota. They have a quota of how many health insurance claims they have to deny. You heard me right. You heard me right. So, you know, when you pay your health insurance, you pay them however much a month. And there are people within the health insurance industry that have a quota of how many people they have to deny in order to meet shareholders' expectations. It's the same way that there's a certain quota for police officers to give out speeding tickets. Oh, we need to give out this many speeding tickets at the end of the month in order for us to do this. So health insurance companies have a quota of how many people they need to deny care to in order to make profits for their shareholders at the top. Do you think that that should be a thing? Do you think that that should be a thing? Because health insurance companies themselves, they give their workers, their sales workers, a quota of how many people we need this many denials this month. Absolutely, like, we need this many denials this month. Can we count on you to do that? So these health insurance companies make money by paying people when other people have been paying them. Does that make sense? It's immoral. Do you all think that there should be quotas for health insurance denials? Because that's what these companies do. And there was one woman who actually made a viral video that got a lot of attention. I don't know if it was here on TikTok, if it was on YouTube, but who worked for United Healthcare back when it was oh God, what was it called? Mamsie. If you get canceled, you have to rely on the charity of others instead of your insurance. Yeah. I was like, what? Someone's trying to cancel me? I read that into it. Yeah. No, 100%. So, that all being said, there are quotas for health insurance employees to meet where, and I actually even heard stories that one person was like, I'm not going to meet my quota for health insurance denials. And guess what? That person got fired for not denying enough people healthcare. You got me right. You heard me right. That person was fired. That person was fired. I'm planning on doing like a deeper expose tomorrow about this. The person was fired for not meeting their quota for denying enough people their healthcare. We're gonna be seeing a lot more stories come out about this in the coming weeks. But I want to go through United Healthcare's leaked talking points, specifically around all of this. So, United Healthcare is now telling their employees to dispute social media criticism and praise their slain CEO. So, this is what the menu looks like. So if you're a United Healthcare employee, again, this is released by Ken Klippenstein, who's an independent journalist. You can find him on X, formerly known as Twitter. I don't know him. I'm just providing that he's a really good source for this kind of information. He posted, this is what the talking points look like. So you can see here, there's a main menu. There's 6 different options. Talking points for calls related to event. This is the talking points that these people who are customer service agents or who work at United Healthcare are told to say when people call on the phone. It's, we're deeply saddened, Brian was highly respected, our hearts go out, yada, yada, yada. There's this thing called abusive caller process. I'm wondering what they define as abusive. But it says, advocates of handling calls. You are encouraged and empowered to disconnect the call. Now, I'm wondering if there's a definition of abusive as anyone voicing a critique or feedback maybe being upset that their health insurance was denied, you're just encouraged to disconnect the call. Oh, but it gets better. It gets better. Because in here, how to respond to some of the social media reports on claim denial rates, etc. They have a whole section. Specifically talking about how they're telling their employees to deny the actual social media reporting of what's happening. You heard me right. You all remember this, hold on, let me find it. You all remember this chart? This is a chart of health insurance claim denial rates by company. You see down here, UHC stands for United Healthcare. They deny around 1/3 of all health insurance claims. You also have Medica, Anthem, CareSource, Aetna. You have the percentages next to all of them. This was an independent analysis done by Value Penguin, which Value Penguin is part of Lending Tree, which is a company that does this kind of stuff, where they go through and do market analysis. And what's so interesting is this, after Brian Thompson was unalive, this started going around all over social media. It started going around on social media constantly. Well, not long ago, earlier in the month, after all of this happened, if you went to go and try to find this chart, it wasn't available. It said, due to recent events, Value Penguin, you can see up here, which again, they're the one that did this. Due to recent events, Value Penguin removed certain data elements from this piece at the request of law enforcement. You're like, oh, well, what did they remove? They ended up removing this graph. Why? Well, one insurer contacted Value Penguin claiming that the denial rate listed in the article is not consistent with their internal records. Well, we as the public don't have access to their internal records. But let's just say, for the sake of trusting this company, I know, right? But trusting them, let's go through and see what they actually provided. They took away the chart, but they have the actual breakdown here. Okay, so let's look. United Healthcare, 32%. Is that consistent with the chart? United Healthcare, 32%. Okay, so far it's consistent. Medica, 27% of claim denials. Medica, 27%. Okay, so it's matching up. Anthem, 23%. Aetna, 20%. Anthem, 23%. Aetna, 20%. Oh, it looks like it matches. CareSource, Molina, Cigna, 2019 and 18. CareSource, Molina, Cigna, 2019 and 18. It's the exact same thing. So, what is so crazy is that United Healthcare put out these talking points. They put out these talking points where they specifically said, part of our mission is ensuring that everyone gets access and privilege of healthcare that they need. We take your concerns very seriously. A chart being widely spread on social media is false. The information circulating online about our claims is false. They're having their lower rung people, a talking point is to deny the existence of facts and information because it's inconvenient to them. They're telling their lower level employees, these folks that work in customer service centers, just to tell, this chart is false. It's not consistent with our internal records. Yet, when you go and look at their internal records, which you can't see, so you have to just trust them, and when you ask them, okay, well, what's your internal records? It matches. Because here's the thing. If it was actually inconsistent, they would have removed the chart, but then also the information that was wrong here. Instead, they just removed the chart, even though it is exactly the same as these things. So what does that tell you? It tells you that law enforcement is acting at the behest of these health insurance companies that are asking for the public not to be informed or knowledgeable about how the system constantly screws us over. So and the folks who are lower level rung employees at United Healthcare are being told to deny reality and existence itself for the purpose of making the money company. Or what is it? Making the company money. You know? It's... If you all think this is insane, then just say yes in the chat. I hope that I'm making sense. I feel like there's a lot of people having other conversations in the chat. I just want to make sure that I'm making sense. I need to stand up and stretch for a sec. It is insane. Yeah. It's like these people have talking points where they have to deny you are OP. What does that mean? I am an opossum? Like, what does that mean? I am OP? Beep, 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 beep. Oh, on point. I didn't know. I don't know what OP is. It's not surprising. Yeah. So, all this being said, there's so many people that are responding in so many different ways right now. But people will say, okay, well, what needs to happen? What needs to happen? We obviously have highlighted the corruption of... Oh, and this is one other thing. New York State officials are considering creating a special hotline exclusively for CEOs to report perceived threats. And so people are like, well, what needs to happen? What do we need to do to actually fix this? Well, if we transition to a universal system where you don't have for-profit companies trying to exploit people by denying them healthcare, that would at least be a start. That would be a start. But what's so interesting is you have these pearl clutchers. People on Fox News, or MSNBC, or CNN, or CBS, or ABC that are like clutching their pearls, being like, oh my God, how is it that these people are so okay with what Luigi Mangione has done? It's immoral. First off, if you are so obsessed with condemning murder, then why are you supporting a system that facilitates it? No, you heard me right. Our current health insurance industry makes money off of denying people health care, which leads them to going bankrupt, and also then they don't have access to that care, which then leads to them having a lower life expectancy and dying. That is state-sponsored violence that's slower, not as immediate, but it leads to death. That is in itself policy designed to do a slow murder. I'm not saying that it means a man should die for it. I'm not saying that at all. Someone might come to that conclusion because if the man perpetuating that system that leads to other people dying, someone might justify the need to unalive that person. I am not at all saying that this was justified. I'm saying someone else might come to that conclusion. What it's so wild though, because there are like all these media elites that are like, how could this kind of thing happen? When you are actively protecting a system that hurts other people, karma's gonna come back to you. Karma's gonna come back to you. So, you know, people are not going to just accept the crumbs that you give them. So it's like, and let me give some examples here. Let me just break this down here. Hold on. Boop, 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 boop. Unalive one person and you're a murderer. Perpetuate a system that leads to 100,000 people dying and you're just increasing shareholder value. You're just increasing shareholder value. When you are the head of a company that makes money off of denying people health insurance, leading to them paying out of pocket for their medical expenses, then often leading to them losing all of their savings and money, but then also being still sick, yeah, they're not going to get the care they need and they're going to die. They're going to die. So if you are so concerned about murder, my answer to you is, why do you then agree with that system that facilitates murder? Why do you then constantly bootlick and brown nose the same people who perpetuate that system? I'm not saying anyone needs to die for that, but it makes sense why someone might come to that conclusion. So, and it's so funny because all these people are like, how could this thing happen? How could this thing happen? They know why. They just want to be dumb. They just want to play dumb because they want people to be pacified. They want to try and quell public opposition and public anger about this injustice. They want to just quell this. They want to pacify us into just taking the crumbs, taking the imperfect system that leads to them profiting off of our pain. So, yeah, no, I'm done taking crumbs. I'm done being pacified. No, ma'am. You know? Anyway, what was I was gonna say? It's really, really interesting. Hold on, let me back up that thing here. I see constant cable news segments on like CNN and MSNBC. And for those of you who do not know, I am a very staunch progressive Democrat. I'm like a Bernie person. I am very much like vote for the most progressive person in the Democratic primary and then vote for the Democrat there unless they're just really bad. And then I'm like, if there's no difference between them, which there always is, but still, like, ugh. That all being said, I find it really, really funny. There's endless cable news segments on MSNBC and CNN, which are not as bad if you want to go that direction as Fox News or OANN, but y'all, they're bad. Stop watching MSNBC and CNN. They're literally just paid actors themselves by captains of industry that then pretend they're like, oh my God, how could Kamala Harris have lost? She went around with Liz Cheney, one of the most unpopular people in the country, and was like, country over party. All these progressives were like, we're not going to vote for you if you constantly parade and gallivant around the country like that. So all these people on CNN and MSNBC are just like high-class, pearl-clutching elitists. And yes, I am saying that as a very, very, very progressive Democrat. But a lot of these people are like, they're going around and being like, these CEOs are terrified. This is something that's interesting. She lost because of misogyny and racism. I think that's part of it. I'm not going to say that it's not part of it, but I think it's really, really simplistic for us to be like, oh, she lost because of misogyny and all of that. I'm not going to say in racism. It's not. That's a whole nother subject. I think that that's definitely part of it. But I think that, broadly speaking, progressives did not want to turn out for her because of her lack of progressive policy. I don't think that it's because of that as the primary reason. Anyway, that all being said, and gallivanting around with Liz Cheney, a very, very unliked person, makes a lot of sense. I would encourage you to go and watch my video. I break down a lot of the facts around that. I mean, opossum? Got it. I have a video that actually talks about that. So go and check out that video. So that all being said, I find it really interesting that there are constant segments on MSNBC and CNN where they're like, this is so wrong. All of these CEOs are terrified. They're terrified about what could happen to them. They're terrified about their lives and their families. Okay, first off, number one, no one should live in fear for their life. No one deserves that. That all being said, why would someone feel that way? What would make a whole bunch of people be so upset at CEOs, captains of industry, shareholders, wealthy people that exploit a system? If you're like How dare these people feel scared for their lives? I mean, now they're all worried that people are going to come for them. Well, you're not asking the question of why people feel like that. Why people are frustrated with the CEOs. Why they're upset by the ruling class or the elite. Why they might be dissatisfied with the way that things are run in America. Like, they focus so much on the CEO's feelings that they don't actually talk about why people might be upset with them. And it's a tactic because they want you to be like, oh yeah, no one should feel that way. Yet, when it comes to the other way around, are they going to have your back? Are they going to care about your life? Are they going to care about your feelings? No. It is a tool to pacify. You know, like the little things that babies put in their mouths? Like, it's designed to pacify people. Does that make sense? It's designed to make people quell their anger. The media will say, oh, these CEOs are terrified. Maybe the CEOs and these captains of industry shouldn't do stuff that make people hate them. Did I stutter? Like, it's so funny. There are all of these cable news people that are like, it's so wrong these people are living in fear. Do you ask yourself why people might not like them? It's because they continue to do things that deny people health care and make excessive amounts of profits for their shareholders by denying other people that health care, bankrupting them in the process. And they're like, how can you hate them? It's like peak gaslighting. Like, it's peak gaslighting. It really is. It's frustrating. And this is why, in my view, we don't need to constantly protect the feelings or the profits of rich, wealthy people who could not care less about us. I'm not saying it's an us versus them thing. I'm simply just pointing out, if CEOs don't want people to be pew-pewing them or unaliving them, maybe don't constantly try to marginalize people through policies that lead to poverty, lead to bankruptcy, lead to death. It's not that hard to get through their heads. If CEOs and wealthy people don't want to fear for their lives, maybe don't do unpopular things that lead to people being upset. And it's wild because MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, their solution, same with Fox. Fox is actually worse than all of them. That all being said, their solution is, oh, well, you should just care, about their lives. Sorry, but I don't worship politicians. I don't worship the rich. I don't constantly aid and abet and brown nose these people. Does that all make sense? Are you all understanding what I'm saying? Are we on the same page? If that makes sense, then I appreciate all of you. So, it's funny how, there are all these media figures that are trying to pacify and, get people to kind of, why don't you care about these people's lives? I should be asking you that question because you continue to perpetuate a system that bankrupts people, also leads them to death, bleed out their savings, and their loved one ends up dying because they don't get access to healthcare. It's the most tone-deaf thing ever. Anyway. Meep, 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 meep. Oh my gosh, Attorney Di is on right now. Attorney Di is up here, or not up here, but is currently live. Do you know who Attorney Di is? I also feel like I've been saying the same thing for the last few days, but I really want people to make sure they get it. You know? A lot of people are like, Scott, you've been covering this for the longest time. Yeah, but it also needs to be covered. We need some class solidarity around having universal health care. I think many creators should be talking about this. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you think so, because I feel like it's kind of lost its zhuzh a little bit. And I feel like that's what kind of like the wealthy people want. They're like, we're just going to ride this out until it all stops. You know? We need a system that actually helps people. This for-profit healthcare system hurts people. It hurts people. We can do something different, y'all. I feel like we need to be talking about inequality every day. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions that I might be able to answer? Thank you so much, Hannah. I really appreciate that. And I'm very, very honored when people learn from my live streams. Sweden is both social and capitalist. Why can't we do that? That's a good question. Why can't we do that? Maybe it's because health insurance companies have so much power and money over everything. I don't know what PMB means. I don't know what that is. Ooh, I've been going for over an hour. There's so much greed. There really is. There really, really is. And also, do you all know what a stock buyback is? I actually want to cover this before I end the live stream today. Do you all know what a stock buyback is? So these health insurance companies don't just make money off of denying people healthcare, where you pay your premium, your copay, your deductible, you pay more and more and more for less and less coverage, that benefit buy down we talk about. These companies also buy back their own stock at the end of the year. And by artificially inflating the value of their company, it leads to a higher compensation package for their CEOs. And you'll say, well, how is that legal? It used to be illegal. It used to be illegal, and then they actually, back in like 1980, decided to undo that. So, let's break this down here. This is a piece from The Lever, which is a good nonpartisan, nonprofit news media outlet. And health insurance companies have been on a spending spree, buying back shares of their own stock. A gimmick, illegal until a few years ago, that has made a few insurance company CEOs incredibly rich, at a time when 100 million Americans are saddled with medical debt. Health insurers have spent nearly $141 billion buying back their own shares since 2007, while premiums and deductibles have skyrocketed. Cigna alone spent $7.218 billion last year buying back its own shares. So, stock buybacks are something that these companies do in order to artificially inflate the value of their company. And you'll say, well, why would they do that? They buy back their own shares because the CEO's compensation, part of the CEO's compensation is tied to the value of the company. So they will buy back their stock at the end of the year so that the CEO can make more money. So let's break all of this down here. Share repurchases benefit top executives and other shareholders at the expense of the insurer's customers, especially health plan enrollees with such high out-of-pocket requirements. They're getting buried under a mountain of medical debt. So let me go a little bit forward here. Between the start of COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020 and the new year of 2023, 5 of the 7 publicly traded health insurance companies spent more than $42 billion buying back shares of their own stock. That's wild. It's important to note that share buybacks were considered stock manipulation prior to 1982. That year, President Ronald Reagan's Securities and Exchange Commission implemented a rule change that paved the way for massive buybacks in subsequent years. Bills have been introduced in the House and Senate to rein in buybacks, but none have gotten through Congress yet. Several House members joined Representatives Peter DeFazio of Oregon and Ro Khanna of California, October, as co-sponsors of the Reward Work Act, which would repeal the Reagan-era Securities and Exchange rule. An analysis of how much companies have used our premiums and tax dollars to buy back shares of their own stock showed that they spent a combined $141 billion on share repurchases between 2007 and 2022. Keep in mind that that there's $141 billion that otherwise could have been used to reduce our premiums, deductibles, and keep an untold number of Americans out of bankruptcy from GoFundMe campaigns. It was used to increase the wealth of the shareholders and top executives. So these health insurance companies, they have the money. They have lots of money. They are swimming in money to buy back their own stocks so that their wealthy people get even more wealthy. Meanwhile, Americans are saddled with medical debt. Medical debt. It's so funny because if this $141 billion is actually used to pay down the medical debt of people would not be suffering. People would not be suffering. But yet, they would still be able to make some good money. And this goes to it. Like, why do these wealthy people have to make so much money? Why do they have to marginalize so many people just to make so much money? Why do they have to do that? It's okay to make a profit. It's okay to be well off. But to the extent where they make this much money, it's wild. It's wild. A strong case can be made for the biggest beneficiaries of these stock buybacks are the company's CEOs. That's because the value of the shares of the stock they hold increase every time their company repurchases shares. It works like this. When a company buys back its own shares of stock, which is value in the company, it reduces the number of shares outstanding. And that has an effect of inflating the value of each share of stock. So, what I paid for in stock, however, was a tiny fraction of what my CEO was paid. As I told reporters when I was Cigna's chief spokesman, this was Wendell Potter, about 90% of the CEO's compensation was, quote, at risk, meaning that most of what was paid was based on how well the company met shareholders' financial expectations, specifically how much the company increased the value of each share of stock, earnings per share, or EPS. Basically, the money insurers CEOs made these days is especially alarming when you consider they are getting more and more of it from us as taxpayers. The three smallest of the 7 big for-profit insurers, Centene, Humana, and Molina, now get 80 to 90% or more of their revenue from taxpayers through the Medicare Advantage plans they operate and the state Medicaid programs they manage. You heard me right. A lot of these CEOs' compensation is partially through the rise of our premiums, our co-pays, our high deductibles, and they use that money to buy back their own stock, which then makes them an exorbitant amount of money. So, combined with the benefit buy down, where they're making you pay more and more for less and less coverage, combined with the stock buybacks, combined with having a quota for denying medical care in order to make money, and repurchasing all of that stock back, yeah, it's understandable why someone might come to the conclusion that violence is necessary. I'm not saying that it's necessary. I don't condone that violence. I'm simply just pointing out that that's why someone might come to that conclusion. It's the same way that Donald Trump's dehumanizing rhetoric, the obnoxious, dangerous ideas and things he says might lead to someone wanting to pew him. I'm not saying that political violence is okay. I'm not. It's understandable why someone else might come to that conclusion. And a lot of these people in the media can't foresee or fathom why someone would do this kind of thing. Why? It's because if they feel like the only way to change the system is by doing that, and look, there's a lot of evidence to show that it actually has been pretty successful. There's a lot of evidence to show that Luigi Mangioni's actions actually have done more than decades of peaceful organizing to bring awareness and action and demand on this issue, on having a system that isn't for-profit healthcare. And look, for those people who are like, oh, but political violence is never okay, I think that you're kind of right. But also, America was kind of founded on political violence. Do you all remember the American Revolution? That was kind of political violence. You know, that was political violence. You know, we as the colonizers from England came over and displaced a whole bunch of Native American people from their land. That was political violence. You also then had the colonists fighting back against England, saying, hey, we don't like the exorbitant high taxes and the lack of representation that we get, so we're gonna break off. We're gonna start our own thing. That was political violence. You had the Civil War that happened. That was political violence. I'm not saying that it's okay. But, like, we enslaved and slaughtered African people, and our founding fathers kidnapped and brought here. We, to this day, force women in our country to give birth against their will. 77 million Americans just voted in November to approve Trump mobilizing the U.S. military to round up and forcibly remove my immigrants, dead or alive, from our country. We spent $8 trillion in the last 20 years bombing and slaughtering people in the Middle East. We are spending billions and billions of dollars right now to bomb and unalive and starve extremist women and children in Gaza. And you, our leaders, are telling us that there's no place for political violence? Like, our nature as America has kind of been defined by political violence. And like, people in America are not celebrating the brutal murder of a father of 2 kids from Minnesota. This response is really about screaming for help, and they're telling you what's wrong. They're saying that the system is not just, and it is not right, and it cannot continue. They want retribution, they want justice, they want healthcare, they want to use their money to live, not throw it away each month into a black hole of health insurance premiums, only to discover that when the time finally comes for them to use their insurance, when their leg breaks, or that car crashes, or that gun accidentally goes off, the health insurance company is there to help get them back up. Is there not to help them, but to deny their claim, bankrupt them with deductibles and copays, and give them the runaround until their spirit is broken and they give up and just wait to die. So that's kind of why this moment is happening the way that it is. Anyway, I need to get to work. I've been going live for a while now, and I need to skedaddle. So I appreciate every single one of you. I really, really do. I work really, really hard to do this. So thank you to all of my mods in here. Thank you to my loyal friends, viewers, all of that. Y'all are incredible. This sun is also getting in my way, so it's kind of annoying. Sent you a DM. Thank you. Thank you, Peace, Tranquility, and Me. Thank you. If this was your first time viewing me live, thank you all so much. Thank you, Olive Trees Are Burning. That's so sad. I appreciate every single one of you. You all are awesome. Joanna Tech, Kate, Akicha, the Effulgent One, that one guy, Rocky, love you. Joanna Tech, MJ Adams, Epic Tickle. Oh my god, that's such a funny name. Hold on, I have to follow you back. I love that name. I love all of you so much. Thank you all for being here. It really means a lot. Watch you with my coffee. Oh, thanks, Brain Candy. Oh, that's a fun name. Let me make sure to follow you back. I like that name. If you have a creative name on TikTok, I'm going to follow you back. You know, like, that's just something I do. I appreciate every single one of you. I really do. Someone said move countries. Well wrote. Well, I can't take credit for it. This was Michael Moore that said that. So anyway, I love all of you so much. Violet, love you. Sherry Jacqueline, have a wonderful day. Let's see. Anyway, I need to skedaddle. I love all of you so much. Just remember that you are beautiful. You are loved. You are valid. You are strong. And you are fierce. All fiber queer. Akicha, love y'all of you. Y'all are awesome. Don't let anyone or anything ever dim your shine. I love all of you so much. Bye!